The invisible line 30 AM. The Korean Demilitarized Zone. Total silence. Except for the low hum of floodlights and the occasional metallic creak of razor wire shifting in the wind. Floodlights carve sharp white tunnels through the darkness, illuminating a strip of land that looks almost pastoral, rolling hills, patches of grass, scattered pines. No buildings. No roads. Just empty space stretching 4 kilometers wide between two parallel fences. Somewhere in that emptiness, a North Korean soldier barely 20, rifle slung, heart hammering breaks from the shadows of his guard post. He sprints toward the southern fence line. Tripwires glint faintly under the lights. Landmines lie buried in patterns only the engineers who planted them fully understand. He knows one misstep ends everything. He reaches the first fence barbed, electrified 10 feet high. He throws his coat over the wire, climbs, drops, rolls. Alarms should scream. They don't. Maybe the sensors failed. Maybe the wind masked his footsteps. Maybe tonight the gods of chance are listening. He keeps running. South Korean troops on the far side spot movement. Floodlights swing. A voice crackles over loudspeakers in Korean. Do not move. Lie flat. He keeps moving. Gunfire erupts short. Controlled bursts from the northern side. Bullets snap past him. He dives into the southern fence line, cuts himself on wire, keeps crawling. South Korean soldiers rush forward, pull him through the final barrier. He collapses, bleeding, alive. Another defector has made it. Another family in the north will never see him again. This is the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone, the most militarized border on Earth. And the most shocking thing about it? It is invisible. From satellite photos, from Google Earth, from a casual glance across the hills. You see green fields, gentle slopes, trees. No towering Berlin Wall. No massive concrete barriers visible from afar. Just a quiet valley between two nations that have technically been at war since 1953. Yet hidden in that deceptive emptiness lies one of the deadliest places on the planet. 2 million landmines, anti-tank ditches, razor wire coils stacked 10 layers deep, motion sensors, thermal cameras, underground tunnels, guard posts every few hundred meters, artillery batteries zeroed on every inch of the line. A 4-kilometer wide death zone where stepping off the designated paths can kill you instantly. A place where birds sing, deer graze, and leopards roam because no human has disturbed the land in 70 years while men with rifles watch each other through scopes, waiting for the moment everything ignites. How can the most militarized border in history be invisible? How can 4 kilometers of grassland hide more concentrated killing power than almost any battlefield on Earth? And why, in 2026, is it more lethal than it has been in decades? The answer begins in 1953, when the guns fell. Silent, but the war never really ended. Birth of the deadliest divide, 1953, Armistice, June 27, 1950. North Korean tanks crash across the 38th parallel. Seoul falls in days. The Korean War explodes. What began as a civil conflict between two halves of a divided nation quickly became the first major proxy war of the Cold War. North Korea, backed by Stalin's Soviet Union and Mao's China, against South Korea, supported by the United States and the United Nations coalition. 3 years of brutal fighting followed: trench warfare, human wave attacks, napalm drops, scorched earth retreats, cities reduced to rubble, families torn apart, 2 million civilians dead, nearly 1 million soldiers killed or missing. Why the spring of 1953, both sides were exhausted. The front line had stabilized roughly along the 38th parallel, the same arbitrary line drawn in 1945 by American Colonels Dean Rusk and Charles Bonesteel on a National Geographic map, meant only as a temporary administrative boundary for accepting Japanese surrender after World War II. Negotiations dragged on for 2 years at Panmunjom, a tiny village in the no-man's land between the armies. The talks were bitter, theatrical, and often stalled over prisoners of war. The United States dropped more bombs on North Korea than it had on Japan in the entire Pacific War. China lost hundreds of thousands, yet neither side could force a decisive victory. On July 27, 1953 at 10:00 a.m., representatives from the United Nations Command, North Korea, and China signed the Korean Armistice Agreement. No peace treaty was ever signed. Technically, the war continues to this day. The agreement created the Korean Demilitarized Zone, a buffer strip 4 kilometers wide, 2 kilometers on each side of the military demarcation line, stretching 248 kilometers from the Yellow Sea to the East Sea, Sea of Japan. The MDL itself was drawn where the armies stood at the moment of ceasefire, often following ridges, rivers, hills, and villages. A jagged scar across the peninsula. The zone was intended as a temporary measure, a place where troops would withdraw, where no fortifications would be built, where the two sides could breathe while diplomats worked toward a final peace. It became anything but temporary. Within weeks, both sides began fortifying their edges of the DMZ. South Korea and the United States laid down barbed wire, anti-tank ditches, observation posts. North Korea did the same, and more. By the late 1950s, the zone was ringed with fences, minefields, and gun emplacements. What was supposed to be demilitarized became one of the most militarized places on Earth, packed with 2 million landmines, razor wire, bunkers, machine gun nests, artillery emplacements zeroed on every approach, and troops on permanent high alert. The scars of the war remain visible. Rusted hulks of T-34 tanks, abandoned bunkers, shell craters still pockmarking hillsides. The villages split by the line, some families separated literally by a few hundred meters, never reunited. A temporary ceasefire line became the most permanent, most dangerous border in the world. What was designed to prevent fighting has instead frozen the conflict in amber, two armies staring at each other across 4 kilometers of death, generation after generation, waiting for the spark that could reignite the war. The armistice did not end the Korean War. It built the deadliest divide humanity has ever engineered, and over 7 decades that divide has only grown more lethal. Fortress architecture, layers of death step across the southern military demarcation line, and you enter what is arguably the most concentrated killing field ever constructed. The DMZ is 4 kilometers wide, but the real danger zone is narrower, sometimes only a few hundred meters, and layered with death in every direction. First come the fences. On the southern side, South Korea maintains a double fence system. An outer barrier of coiled concertina wire 10 feet high, topped with razor blades that slice in every direction. An inner fence, electrified, monitored by vibration sensors and infrared beams. Between them lies a gravel strip raked smooth every morning. Any footprint shows immediately. North Korea mirrors this with its own triple fence lines, often electrified and booby-trapped. Buried beneath and between those fences are approximately 2 million landmines, anti-personnel, anti-tank, bounding fragmentation mines designed to leap 1 meter into the air before detonating at chest height. Many date from the 1950s. Others were replanted in the 2010s and 2020s as tensions rose. The fields are not neatly mapped. Decades of rain, erosion, and vegetation have shifted them. Defectors describe crawling on hands and knees, feeling for the telltale click of a pressure plate, praying the next step isn't the last. One wrong placement of a palm or knee, and shrapnel tears through flesh in milliseconds. Anti-tank ditches, deep trenches lined with concrete or steel crisscross likely armored approaches. Dragon's teeth, pyramid-shaped concrete obstacles, and Czech hedgehogs block vehicle paths. These are backed by pre-sighted artillery positions, 155 mm howitzers, multiple launch rocket systems, and K-9 Thunder self-propelled guns on the southern side, 170 m Coxswain guns and 240 mm multiple rocket launchers on the northern side, all zeroed to saturate the entire zone within minutes. Observation towers rise every few hundred meters, steel skeletons topped with searchlights, thermal cameras, and snipers. South Korean posts are modern, often equipped with AI-assisted surveillance. North Korean ones are more austere, concrete bunkers with manual spotters. Guard posts, small fortified buildings called GOPs, guard observation posts, stand every 500 meters along both sides. Soldiers rotate 24/7, binoculars scanning, fingers near triggers, under orders to shoot anything that moves without authorization. Beneath the surface lie the tunnels. North Korea has dug at least 4 known infiltration tunnels since the 1970s concrete-lined, narrow-gauge rail tracks, air vents, designed to move thousands of troops or special forces behind enemy lines in hours. The fourth, discovered in 1990, was large enough for tanks. South Korea has countered with seismic sensors and counter-tunnel drilling teams, but new tunnels are suspected. Every layer is redundant. A defector who survives the mines might trip a vibration sensor. A soldier who climbs the fence might trigger motion detectors. A vehicle that breaches the ditch faces pre-registered artillery. The architecture is not defensive, it is exterminative. One wrong step, one moment of hesitation, one gust of wind shifting a mine, and death arrives instantly. Shrapnel, explosion, machine gun fire from both sides. This is not a border. It is a machine designed to kill anyone who tries to cross it. And in the last few years, that machine has been upgraded. New concrete barriers, additional mine belts, electrified razor wire, drone jammers, AI cameras. The DMZ is not frozen in 1953. It is evolving, becoming deadlier with every passing season. What drives a person to risk this gauntlet? And why, after 70 years, does the world still accept a place where nature thrives but humans die in seconds? Life inside the zone, nature's paradox. Walk into the DMZ at midday, and the silence is almost deafening. No cars. No farmers. No villages. Just wind moving through tall grass, the distant call of a bird, the rustle of leaves. 4 kilometers of land untouched by human development for over 70 years. In that absence of people, something extraordinary has happened. Nature has reclaimed the deadliest border on Earth. Ecologists call it the accidental wildlife sanctuary. Without farming, logging, roads, or heavy industry, the DMZ has become one of the most pristine temperate habitats left on the Korean peninsula. Red-crowned cranes, among the rarest birds in the world, gather by the thousands in the wetlands each winter, their elegant white bodies and crimson crowns dancing across frozen marshes. Black-faced spoonbills, another critically endangered species, feed in the tidal flats along the western coast. Amur leopards, perhaps the most endangered big cat on the planet, have been camera-trapped prowling the northern slopes. Siberian tigers, once thought extirpated from the region, are rumored to cross from Russia into the northern buffer zone, their tracks occasionally found in snow. Brown bears, lynx, Asiatic black bears, and even the elusive goral, a goat-like antelope, thrive here. Over 70 mammal species, 300 bird species, and more than 3,000 plant species have been documented. Rare orchids bloom in hidden valleys. Otters play in streams that flow undisturbed. The absence of human activity has allowed forests to regenerate, wetlands to recover, and predator-prey relationships to rebalance in ways long lost elsewhere in both Koreas. The irony is stark. This 4-kilometer strip, ringed by 2 million landmines, watched by snipers, lit by floodlights at night, is more ecologically intact than almost any other place on the peninsula. Where humans cannot go, life flourishes. The DMZ has become an unintended nature preserve, a green wound between two nations, healing itself while everything around it remains on edge. But the paradox cuts deeper. Every crane that lands on a minefield risks instant death. Every leopard that pads across a patrol path could trigger a sensor and bring gunfire from both sides. The very things that allow wildlife to thrive, the lack of pesticides, the absence of poachers, the untouched rivers, are the same things that make the zone so lethal to humans. A single misstep by a curious deer can detonate a bounding mine, sending shrapnel in a deadly arc. A fox digging a den might unearth an old anti-personnel device. Nature is indifferent to the politics that created this place. This is the strangest truth of the DMZ. The deadliest border on Earth is also one of its most pristine ecosystems. A place where biodiversity explodes precisely because humanity has been forbidden to interfere. A fragile Eden wrapped in razor wire and high explosives. Yet the balance is precarious. Every time tensions rise, every new fence, every replanted minefield, every military drill, the sanctuary shrinks a little more. The cranes still migrate, the leopards still hunt, but they do so on borrowed time, living on the razor's edge between apocalypse and rebirth. How long can nature thrive in a place built for destruction? And what happens when the next crisis forces humans back into this green no man's land? Defectors and guards, human cost. The DMZ is not just wire and mines. It is a place where human beings confront impossible choices every night. Consider the defectors. They are rarely soldiers or elites with access to vehicles or bribes. Most are ordinary North Koreans, farmers, factory workers, low-ranking soldiers who reach the breaking point. Hunger, beatings, fear of the labor camps, the constant propaganda that South Korea is a hell of poverty and crime. Yet the glimpses of Southern prosperity that leak through smuggled USB drives or Chinese phones tell a different story. The decision to defect is not made lightly. It is born from despair so deep that death seems preferable to another day in the system. One defector in 2017 was Oh Chong-song, a 24-year-old North Korean soldier. He stole a Jeep, drove it toward the joint security area at Panmunjom, crashed when it got stuck, then sprinted across the line under heavy fire from his own comrades. 4 bullets hit him chest, arm, leg. South Korean troops dragged him to safety while North Korean soldiers fired over 40 rounds. He survived emergency surgery and later described the moment. I thought, if I die here, at least I die free. His family, parents, siblings were almost certainly sent to political prison camps as punishment. He will never see them again. Another story, a woman in her 30s who crawled through a minefield near Chirwan in 2019. She carried her infant son strapped to her back. She moved inch by inch in the dark, feeling for tripwires with her hands, whispering to the baby to stay quiet. One mine detonated nearby, shrapnel tore into her leg. She kept crawling, bleeding, until South Korean patrols found her at dawn. The child survived unharmed. She later said she defected because her husband had been executed for watching a South Korean drama on a smuggled phone. She knew the same fate awaited her and her son. These stories are not rare. Since 1998, over 34,000 North Koreans have defected to the South, most crossing the DMZ or the Chinese border first. But the DMZ route is the most direct and the most lethal. Those who make it arrive traumatized, often with gunshot wounds, frostbite, or shrapnel scars. Many carry guilt heavier than their injuries. They left parents, siblings, children behind to face collective punishment. Now consider the guards who shoot them. North Korean border soldiers operate under shoot-to-kill orders. The Korean People's Army regulations are explicit. Any unauthorized movement toward the South is treason. Guards who fail to fire face immediate execution or dispatch to labor camps. Many are young conscripts, 18 to 25, themselves malnourished and indoctrinated from childhood. They are told defectors are traitors who will reveal military secrets, that hesitation means their own families will suffer. Some fire reluctantly, tears in their eyes. Others become hardened, desensitized. A few have defected themselves after refusing to shoot knowing the cost. One former guard, interviewed anonymously after defecting in 2022, described the psychological toll. You stand post at night, staring at the southern lights, hearing South Korean music drifting over the loudspeakers. You know, if someone runs, you must kill them. If you don't, your comrades will report you. Your mother, your sister, they will disappear. So you shoot, and every time you do, a piece of you dies too. The human cost is symmetrical in cruelty. Defectors risk everything for a chance at freedom, often losing their families forever. Guards enforce the regime's will, knowing disobedience means their own destruction. Both are trapped victims of a system that turns neighbors into executioners and dreamers into targets. What drives someone to crawl through razor wire, past mines, under gunfire, leaving everything behind? Desperation, hope. The belief that even a slim chance at life in the South is worth more than certain misery in the North. And what keeps the guards pulling the trigger? Fear. Survival. The knowledge that in this invisible line of death, mercy is the deadliest risk of all. The DMZ does not merely separate two countries. It separates people from their humanity, one desperate sprint, one reluctant shot at a time. Escalation 2010s 2020s. From stalemate to brink for decades after the armistice, the DMZ remained a frozen front, tense, deadly, but relatively static. Guard posts stared at each other. Occasional firefights flared and faded. Defections happened in ones and twos. The landmines stayed where they were planted in the 1950s. Both sides maintained the uneasy balance of mutual deterrence. Nobody wanted to be the one to restart the war. That changed in the 2010s. Under Kim Jong-un, who assumed power in December 2011, North Korea adopted a doctrine of brinkmanship on steroids. Nuclear tests accelerated 5 between 2006 and 2017. With the 6th in September 2017 being a claimed thermonuclear device. Each detonation was paired with missile launches that overflew Japan or splashed down in the Sea of Japan. Kim declared North Korea a nuclear state in the Constitution. The message was explicit. Any attempt at regime change would trigger nuclear retaliation. The DMZ itself began to harden. In 2012, 2015, North Korea replanted thousands of anti-personnel mines along its southern fence line, fresh, modern devices replacing decayed 1950s stock. South Korea responded in kind, reinforcing its own barriers. By the late 2010s, new concrete anti-vehicle walls appeared on the northern side, low but thick, designed to stop tanks and slow infantry. Electrified fencing was upgraded with higher voltage and redundant sensors. Observation towers received thermal imaging and AI-assisted cameras. The brief thaw of 2018, when Kim and Moon Jae-in met at Panmunjom, when soldiers briefly dismantled some guard posts, proved illusory. By 2020, relations had collapsed again.
North Korea blew up the Inter-Korean Liaison Office in Kaesong in June 2020. In response, both sides resumed loudspeaker propaganda broadcasts, blaring K-pop news of defectors, and criticisms of the Kim regime from the South, revolutionary marches, threats of annihilation, and anti-American screeds from the North. The noise wars reached new volumes in 2024-2025, with 24-hour broadcasts designed to drive soldiers mad. Then came the trash balloons. Starting in May 2024 and intensifying through 2025, North Korea launched thousands of balloons carrying bags of manure, toilet paper, cigarette butts, used batteries, and propaganda leaflets across the border. South Korea answered with its own balloons carrying USB drives filled with K-dramas, news, and money. The balloons became weapons of psychological warfare, drifting unpredictably, forcing evacuations, triggering alerts, and occasionally landing in Seoul suburbs. Drone incursions escalated the danger. In 2022-2023, North Korean drones penetrated South Korean airspace multiple times, prompting South Korea to shoot down several. By 2025, both sides deployed small surveillance and attack drones along the line. Jamming systems went active. Anti-drone nets were strung over key positions. A single drone crash could spark gunfire across the zone. Nuclear rhetoric reached fever pitch. In January 2024, Kim Jong-un ordered the military to completely destroy South Korea if war broke out. In October 2025, he threatened preemptive nuclear strikes against any perceived threat. North Korea test-fired hypersonic missiles and solid-fuel ICBMs capable of reaching the U.S. mainland. South Korea accelerated its own missile programs and deepened U.S. extended deterrence commitments. Why is the DMZ deadlier now than during the Cold War? Because the old stalemate relied on predictable deterrence. Today, multiple new vectors, balloons, drones, cyber intrusions, propaganda at maximum volume create constant friction points. A single balloon landing on a minefield, a drone misidentified as hostile, a defector triggering sensors during a loudspeaker broadcast. Any could spark the chain reaction neither side fully controls. The DMZ is no longer just a static line of mines and wire. It is a hyper-sensitive tripwire wrapped around two nuclear, armed states locked in escalating psychological and technological warfare. The Cold War border was dangerous. The 2020s version is volatile, one spark away from ignition, and the fuse is burning shorter every day. 2025-2026 reality more lethal than ever. January 2026. The DMZ is no longer the Cold War relic many still imagine. It has become a hyper-modernized death strip, upgraded in ways that make crossing it exponentially riskier than even a decade ago. North Korea has deployed AI-assisted surveillance along key sectors. Thermal cameras with facial recognition and motion tracking algorithms now scan the northern fence line 24/7. These systems feed data to command posts where software flags anomalies, human shapes, unusual heat signatures, even the movement patterns of animals that might mask a defector. False positives trigger automatic alerts. Guards no longer rely solely on tired eyes and binoculars. The technology reduces reaction time from minutes to seconds. New anti-personnel minefields have been laid in layers. Since 2023, Pyongyang has replanted tens of thousands of modern bounding fragmentation mines, devices that leap 1 meter before exploding in a 360-degree spray of steel balls. Unlike the old Soviet-era mines, many now feature anti-tamper mechanisms disturb the soil around them, and they detonate instantly. South Korean intelligence reports that some sectors have smart mines linked to seismic sensors. Step too heavily, and the nearest mine activates. The density in high-risk corridors is now estimated at 1 mine per square meter in places. Border troop numbers have surged. North Korea rotated an additional 10,000 soldiers to the DMZ front in late 2025. Many from elite light infantry units trained for rapid response. South Korea matched the move, reinforcing its forward positions with K-2 Black Panther tanks, K-9 Thunder artillery, and special forces teams on permanent standby. The number of active guard posts has increased, with overlapping fields of fire now covering every meter of the line. Propaganda loudspeakers operate at maximum volume around the clock. North Korean broadcasts alternate between threats of total annihilation, recordings of Kim Jong-un's speeches, and looped revolutionary songs meant to demoralize Southern troops. South Korea counters with K-pop, news of defections, economic data showing Southern prosperity, and direct appeals to Northern soldiers. Your leaders live in luxury while you starve, cross now, and live free. The noise never stops. Sleep becomes impossible for those on both sides. Psychological exhaustion is now a deliberate weapon. Balloon SAOPs have escalated into routine operations. In 2025 alone, North Korea launched over 15,000 trash and leaflet balloons, many carrying USB drives with regime propaganda or small explosives designed to scatter on impact. South Korea responded with 20,000-plus counter balloons carrying K-dramas, cash, food packets, and messages urging defection. These slow-moving aerial weapons drift unpredictably, triggering air raid sirens in Seoul suburbs, forcing evacuations, and occasionally detonating small charges near military positions. One balloon in November 2025 landed on a South Korean minefield and triggered a chain explosion that injured 2 soldiers. South Korea has not stood still. New concrete anti-vehicle barriers, low walls topped with electrified razor wire, now run parallel to the southern fence in vulnerable sectors. Drone jammers blanket key areas. AI-powered counter-drone systems automatically detect and neutralize incoming UAVs. Special forces conduct regular barrier integrity patrols, clearing vegetation to deny cover. The cumulative effect is a DMZ more sensitive, more automated, and more lethal than at any point since 1953. A single balloon drifting into a minefield, a drone misidentified as hostile, A defector tripping a sensor during a loudspeaker barrage, any could ignite the chain reaction. Nuclear rhetoric from Pyongyang remains at fever pitch. Kim Jong-un's 2025 New Year address warned of preemptive nuclear strikes. If South Korea or the U.S. provoke even slightly, missile tests continued into December 2025, including a solid fuel ICBM capable of reaching the continental United States. Is war closer than anyone admits? The mechanisms for accidental escalation have multiplied. The margin for error has shrunk to nothing. One miscalculation, one panicked finger on a trigger, one balloon that lands in the wrong place. And the frozen conflict could thaw in fire. The invisible line holds, but it trembles. Legacy of the line, why it endures and haunts the Korean Demilitarized Zone, has outlasted the Berlin Wall, the Iron Curtain, the Cold War itself. It endures not because peace was achieved, but because peace was never possible. No formal peace treaty has ever replaced the 1953 armistice. The Korean War remains legally active, a frozen conflict suspended in time, with 75 million people on the peninsula living under its shadow. The line drawn in haste on a 1945 map has become one of the most intractable geopolitical traps in modern history. Families remain divided by a few hundred meters yet separated by generations. Grandparents who fled south in 1950 never saw their children again. Siblings born on opposite sides have never met. Every Lunar New Year in Chuseok, South Koreans gather at Imjingak Park near the border, sending messages north on balloons, lighting lanterns, weeping for relatives they will never embrace. North Koreans who dare to listen to Southern broadcasts risk execution. The human cost is measured not just in lives lost at the wire, but in the quiet agony of permanent separation. The nuclear shadow darkens everything. North Korea's arsenal, estimated at 50-90 warheads by 2026, hangs over the peninsula like a guillotine. Every missile test, every threat of preemptive strike, every border incident raises the specter of escalation. Seoul, with 10 million people, lies 50 kilometers from the DMZ, within range of thousands of artillery tubes that could fire 20,000 rounds per hour. A single miscalculation could kill hundreds of thousands in the first minutes. Yet the line persists because neither side can afford to cross it, and neither can afford to let it go. For North Korea, the DMZ is both shield and prison, proof of the regime's defiance, but also the cage that traps its people. For South Korea and the United States, it is the front line of containment, necessary deterrence, but a permanent reminder of unresolved war. China and Russia watch, ensuring the status quo protects their interests. One invisible line holds 75 million lives in suspense. It has held for over 70 years through famine, nuclear tests, balloon wars, loudspeaker battles, defections, and near misses. But every wire, every mine, every guard post is a potential spark. Every defector's sprint, every accidental incursion, every moment of panic on a dark night brings the question closer: how long until it snaps? The DMZ is not just a border, it is a scar that never healed. A promise of violence deferred, a testament to how fear and pride can keep a war alive long after the shooting stops. And somewhere along that invisible line, in the silence between floodlights and gunfire, the next chapter waits, poised, patient, and perilously close.